down, power lines are down.
Message of 290 characters follows.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Grid Down Comms Up. We're going to pick up on the second part of our micro solar for communications episode. And today we're going to go through a worksheet that I put together to kind of help you determine a little bit of information that will help you decide how big of a battery bank do you need, how many solar panels do you need, what size charge controller do you need, all of those things about building a solar system for this purpose. And we're going to use my station as an example. I've been running it off grid for several years now. We're going to use some of my data, and we're going to use some of the data that we measured in the last video. So if you paid attention, you saw me amp clamp my station. I was getting about 3.15 amps. I've got a couple of extra little side projects running on that, so we're just going to round that down to 3 amps to make the math a little easier for me to do on video, keep the numbers a little bit prettier. So we are going to start with calculating here, what size battery do we need? So we know that my current draw was 3 amps, okay? And our duty cycle in minutes. So this is how much out of every hour that we're going to be in receive mode, okay? In a second, we're going to calculate the rest of that time in transmit mode. So we're going to figure you don't transmit that much we're not doing a contest. We're not doing something where we have a high duty cycle. Maybe you're running 1 net a day where that you transmit a lot, but the rest of the time you're running, maybe you transmit 5 minutes an hour. Okay. So we're going to just kind of make the assumption that it averages out across the day, that we are transmitting on our station for 5 minutes. We'll make it 10 minutes. We'll do 10 minutes an hour. So that leaves us with 50 minutes in receive. So we're going to do 3 times 50. I got to get my calculator here so I don't make any errors while trying to do math on video. So 3 times 50 minutes is 150 minutes, and we're going to divide that by 60, which gives us 2.5 amp hours, okay? So that means we are consuming 2.5 amp hours every 50 minutes while we are receiving. So now let's take a look at our transmit current draw. So let's say that we are drawing 12 amps during transmit, and there's 10 minutes left in the hour, so we're going to be transmitting for 10 minutes out of every hour at 12 amps. So 12 times 10 is 120. And now we're going to divide 120 by 60, which is going to give us 2. So we are consuming 2 amp hours in transmit in that 10 minutes. So we're going to take and we're going to total this up. So we're going to do 2.5 for receive, and now for our transmit, we are going to fill in 2. We're going to add those together for a total of 4.5 amp hours per hour to operate our station at our estimated current draw here, or kind of measured current draw and estimated use. Okay, so now we're going to plug in that 4.5 amp hours here, and we're going to multiply that times the number of hours we want to operate off of our battery with no external input, okay? So say we want to operate for 30 hours at 4.5 amp hours. So we would take 30, multiply that by 4.5 amp hours. That's 135 amp hours, okay? Now, let's make this a little more realistic because batteries tend to come in 100 amp hour quantities. So say we wanted to do this for 48 hours, okay? So 4.5 times 48 hours gives us 216 amp hours. So we can't quite, but we'll do 216. All right. So if we want to operate for 48 hours, that means we need 216 amp hours of available capacity. Okay, I don't have that. I have 200 amp hours, and if we don't draw, I'm completely dead. We don't quite have that, so I can't quite operate 48 hours off of that, but this will give us, this is how we calculate how long we can run. Now, we have to remember, the sun is up, we're charging off solar, so us going 48 hours with absolutely no input is pretty unusual. Even on a rainy day, we're going to get some solar generation. It may not charge your batteries. It may not even offset that 3 amp hours worth of current draw. But it might offset some of it, so that's power we're not consuming while that's going on. So now let's take a look at our recharging system. So if we are operating say we've got 500 watts of solar, we got two 250 watt panels, or maybe let's do 600. Okay, so we have two 300 watt panels. You can pick up used 300 watt panels all day long for about $50 a piece. So for $100 you get 600 watts of solar. We're never going to actually see the full 600 watts, but we're just going to, for the sake of math here, we will do this, and then we will calculate in a hefty fudge factor later. All right, so our system voltage, well, we are running a 12-volt system, which in lithium world is a nominal 12.8 volts. So we take 600 and we divide that by 12.8 volts. And I'm sorry for you guys who are allergic to math. This is just part of doing this kind of stuff. Now we need to figure out how many hours of sun per day we have. So the problem with this is we don't have the same number of hours of sun every day. There's a term called solar insolation. We talked about it in the last video, which is the number of usable hours of sun per day per given time of year. In my part of the world, in December, shortest days of the year, we might get 4 hours of usable sun per day. Summertime, we're going to have plenty, but we're going to say 4 hours of usable sun because I need this thing to work in December, right? So now we're going to multiply our last number there times 4 hours. And that means that we are able to generate 187.5 amp hours. Now we need to add in our charge controller efficiency. So charge controllers are not 100% efficient. Solar panels, not 100% efficient. So we're going to assume, and we're going to be generous on this, that we're about 90% efficient. Okay, so we are about 90% efficient on this. So we multiply that 187.5 times 0.9, and that gives us 168.75 amp hours per day of charge in that 4 hour time period. So obviously that's not quite enough to recharge if we've run our battery bank completely dead in one day. We'd need a little bit more solar power. And we might get lucky and we might get, on either side of that 4 hours, some less than full production that would make up for that other needed 31.25 amp hours. But, with a couple days of sun, we'll catch back up pretty quick on that if we go for 48 hours without any charge. Okay, now we need to figure out what our charge controller capacity is. Okay, so we need to pick what kind of charge controller we need. So if we have 600 watts of panels and our system voltage is 12.8, so we did this a few minutes ago. So we're going to come back to that number of 600 divided by 12.8, and that gives us 46.8. We'll just call it 46.9. We'll round to 46.9, or we'll just round all the way to 47 amps for our charge controller. Now, The charge controllers obviously don't come in 47 amps, so ideally we would get a 50 amp charge controller. Okay. If you were only running 500 watts of solar panels, you probably get away with a 40, no problem. But that's how we decide what size charge controller we need. We need a charge controller that is able to deliver all of that power coming from our solar panels into our batteries. All right. Okay, so now we're going to look at line 7 here and the amount of solar panel power production that we need in order to recharge our batteries based off of them being completely dead. And that will help us. This is if you want to recharge them 100% in one day. It helps you size, okay, maybe this number we got from 5, maybe we need to add some more to that, right? So we're going to take line 5 or line 4, we're going to take the number of amp hours our entire system holds, so 216, plus the power it takes to run our system, which is up here on line 3. So we have 4.5, and we're going to multiply 4.5 times 4 hours, because we're expecting to have 4 hours of full charge. You'll get more. And it'll offset that on either side. That's just some fudge room in the positive for us to make up for some other losses we're not dialing down into to calculate. So if we take 216 and add that to 18, we get 234 amp hours. All right, 234 amp hours if we wanted to recharge this in one day. Okay, 234 to recharge in one day. If we look up here, we're getting 168.75 or about 169. So we are short around 65 amp hours. Okay, we'll make up potentially some of that if we have a full sunny day on either side of that 4 hours. We'll pick up a little bit more charge. Or if we want to be able to get back to 100% after 48 hours of no charge, we might need to add another solar panel. Okay, so that's their sanity check there. It helps us provide a robust system that can recharge 100% on the shortest day of the year. Now, some of us don't design our systems that way. If you want to reduce your power consumption on the shortest day of the year, that's kind of what I do. My system's designed very much around the numbers that are listed here. And if we go for 2 or 3 days in December with no sunlight to amount to anything, I'll start turning off some gear that is not essential. I will not charge my AA batteries and my HTs and stuff for a day or two, and I will use the batteries that I have already charged previously when I had a surplus of power. So I'll conserve just a little bit during that time in order to kind of offset for a little bit less charging. And then once we get out of that, week or two of shortest days of the year, things even out and come back to normal, and I'm able to keep up pretty well. Okay, your other option would be, if you come up short, then is you could run a generator for a while if you needed to, if you have that as an option. You could also, throw out an extra solar panel that time of year if you need to, in order to make up some difference there. But that is the way to calculate your solar needs for a very robust system. A lot of off-gridders do not design a robust system. They design a system around the average of the year, and then they run a generator in the wintertime if they need to. Well, those of us who are planning on being off-grid for a long time, storing fuel and running a generator may not be an option. So we may need to calculate for a more robust setup and arrangement, especially for our communications and other mission-critical gear. That is the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. I hope you guys found this useful and kind of helping do a little bit of the numbers to figure out how much of a solar system you need to operate your ham station or keep your insulin refrigerator running or whatever, to get a proper amount of solar, proper amount of battery storage capacity, and the right charge controller for what you need. If you found this useful, please share this with others. As always, click the like button, subscribe. That way this channel gets out to more people, and you guys can share what is hopefully useful information with some others. Also, kind of on this topic of emergency power and solar systems and that kind of thing, I just want to remind you guys that every system needs to be tested, okay? You don't put this stuff in a box and, oh, when the grid goes down, I'll get it out and set it up, okay? It's a lot easier to remove that tree that in early December starts shading your solar panels for the next 2 months now than it is after the grid goes down and you realize, oh, I don't get any power during those 2 months because the sun's behind that tree over there. So you need to pressure test your systems, make sure they work, make sure everything works as expected. We're coming up on Amron's annual T-Rex exercise here in a couple of weeks, and every year somebody's like, oh yeah, my battery's going to work. I'll be on the air all weekend off grid. They disconnect the power to their station at noon on Friday, and by Saturday noon they're back on the grid to keep participating because that battery that was supposed to last all weekend didn't make it a day. So run your systems, run them off grid, make sure they work all year. All right. Wish you guys the best, 7-3, and I hope you guys have a blessed month. I got another antenna build coming up for you guys next week.